Awesome. Okay, it is live. Hello, world. Hope you're doing very, very well. I have probably one of my most, favorite possible guests today, who is
Andy Roberts.
Andy Roberts. So Andy's, got an interesting, at least for me, I'll share a couple things that are interesting for me about Andy is that I feel like I see Andy everywhere. And I don't mean that like in a physical sense. I don't walk and be like, oh, look, it's Andy. No, I mean online. Like I see him in different comments. I see him in I feel like every single or a huge amount of different polyglots or people that talk about language learning. I feel like Andy is kind of, at least in some capacity, following and commenting and engaging, etc. And so I feel very honored to have him here and on a 5-minute language chats. So I guess a good place to start would be, I guess for you, Andy, like how many people do you follow? I'm curious.
That's a good question because I don't follow anyone very closely. I got an echo, but I don't try to watch every video for anybody. But there's probably 10 or 15 channels that I do follow, and then some that I'll check up on every once in a while, another 5 or 10. So yeah, anywhere up to 20. I feel that everybody has something to contribute. We all know different things. We all have different experiences. We all use, one interesting thing is in the polyglot community, everybody has their own ways of doing things. And, there might be similar, but everyone has slight differences. So, I was just watching a video the other day with Polyglot Jake, I think his name is, and he's saying that he's a young guy he studies like 30 languages at the same time, but he was starting.
Did you say 30 languages at the same time?
I don't think he's very advanced in any of them. He's probably a beginner in everything, but he's just so enthusiastic. He just studies every language he comes across, and so he was showing us a video of his notebooks for 2 of them, and I wrote to him that you seem to use a writing-based approach, and I tend to use a speaking-based approach as a beginner. But he wrote back, no, it's just for these languages that I'm using this writing-based approach, not every language. But anyway, even when people use similar approaches, they still don't do it exactly the same way. So we all have stuff to share and to learn from each other.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why I listen to so many people.
Totally. And I guess I'm curious, so let's go pre-internet, like in the days of CDs and books and everything. I mean, were there people, I wouldn't know, but were there people or like authors or maybe people who made courses? Were there anyone at that point that you followed or that you looked forward to reading from or anything? Or is this like following started with the internet?
Yeah, it really started with the internet, actually, with an interview that Jan van der Aa did of Connor Klein 5 or 8 years ago. And I may have seen a video of Steve Kaufman or 2, but he just could be some quack out there at the time. It's only when I heard this interview of Jan and Connor that I started to get the idea that, hey, there really might be a group of enthusiasts out there on the internet. And so I kept looking in YouTube. That's where I found them originally, was YouTube. Lately, I'm finding them more on Facebook and Twitter.
Interesting.
Especially Ollie Richards has this really huge group of followers that are on Facebook that post questions and answer each other's questions. And I participate in that one a lot. And now, who is it? Kirsten
Cable?
Her group is starting to pick up steam in Facebook too. And so these are great venues for bouncing ideas off of each other and seeing how different people answer the same question.
Mm-hmm.
And then, before that, it was all I could see was, a couple of library books about how to learn a language, any language, whatever. And, I glanced through them, but I didn't see much of interest to me. I think it's hard to get an idea, I think, often from a book. So I rarely go that way.
Yeah.
For this topic.
And how long have you been interested or passionate about language learning?
Well, I was curious about it ever since I was about 9 years old. My mom took me to a garage sale, and they're selling two books for learning Spanish. One was a coloring book of fruits and vegetables, and so I distinctly remember one of grapes, and it said Las Uvas underneath, and so I was coloring that, and so of course that didn't last very long. I eventually got thrown away, but then there was another one that was a high school level textbook from the mid 20th century that or probably could pass as a university textbook today because um, they crammed so much into each chapter that especially with the grammar focus. And
Mhm.
so I spent a lot of time on chapter one with the vocabulary, but couldn't really get very far into chapter two. At 9 years old, you just can't handle that kind of stuff. Um,
Right.
and so I held on to the book for years. It's probably still in my garage, and eventually did try to get through it a little bit more, a few chapters, but um, uh, anyway, so I was really rearing to take Spanish in high school, but Spanish classes were filled up because it's the easiest language and the most useful one, I guess. So it's what everybody studies. We're required to take 2 years of language in high school because we're a college preparatory school in a rich town. Not everybody's rich here, but the town itself is rich. I think we bought this house and we have no money after that words for anything else in our
Mm.
family. But um, because there's so many rich people, they have high quality education. It's really good college preparatory stuff. So anyway, so we're required to take languages, and so the Spanish classes are full. I thought, well, I have four older sisters. They had taken French classes when they were in high school. The youngest is 4 years older than me, so even by the time I got in high school, they'd all graduated and moved out of the house. But anyway, so I took French, thinking I could converse with them afterwards. But of course, they had forgotten the French quickly afterwards. But I took 3 years of French in high school. My sophomore, junior, senior years. And my senior year, my last year, I all they started a Japanese class, so I took the Japanese
Interesting.
class as well. And then at the same time, I took in my free time, I bought a Spanish book called Spanish Now. You'll find in most big bookstores in the U.S. And it's a huge paperback, kind of a workbook with a textbook mixed in. And so it has dialogues, and then it has blanks to fill in about with the verb forms and stuff.
Yeah.
And so I took like old envelopes and I cut them up to make flashcards to
Cool.
study the vocabulary in there. And so uh, that was my first time studying languages on my own. So by the time I graduated from high school, I was really hooked on languages. So, but when I went to college, I was going to say, okay, I'm going to get some kind of international career, work overseas or something like that, but I didn't know what. But it wasn't until I actually visited France halfway through college that I decided to become a teacher, and so I majored in French.
Got it. So
But then
your
I
first language that you studied was French then or Spanish?
French then because you could say I tried to learn Spanish on my own but couldn't as a
Right.
child,
Okay, got it.
and so French is the main one. But yeah,
Nice.
by the time I was graduating from high school, I've been studying three languages, one on my own, and that's when I was really hooked on languages.
Nice. So I guess for you, like, is there anything that you are really focused on in terms of the whole field of languages? Anything in particular that your headspace is really on that you're focused on?
Well, for one thing, picking languages that now that I'm in my low 50s, picking languages that I can use. Well, I've always had the dream of using a language in a career, and so now I'm thinking, okay, I have a limited amount of time, so I can say only learn a limited number of languages to a high degree. So I picking the languages that I could actually use. So I'd like to become a tour guide when I retire, and maybe use languages there. But my fallback plan would be to do volunteer work. And so, well, I look at the list of what kinds of tourists do we get in my city, and then the list of, okay, what kind of refugees and immigrants do we have in my city? And I kind of put them together to see, okay, what languages fall on both lists. And Korean and Spanish are both on both lists. And so those are two languages I've studied before that I'm now going to be more serious about. So basically, planning for the future and using the languages in the future as one of my main focuses. And then
Cool.
because I now love Japanese so much, I've always wanted to read novels in like here's one in Japanese. They have the text goes right to left and top to bottom, and is
Okay. Yep.
and the books are small enough, a lot of them, to actually fit in a pocket. Well, our paperbacks don't, and so it would be really cool, and I have cargo pants with big pockets, so I would love to learn Japanese well enough to read these novels and carry them with me. Of course, I never knew I now need glasses too, reading glasses, but still, that's one thing that I'm really looking forward to. So I'm working really hard on my Japanese reading too, even though it's not one of those languages that's, well, it's useful for tourism, but not so much for immigrants in my city.
Yeah. How do you tend to remember a lot of the new vocabulary in languages you learn?
If it's for reading like this, like with French, I just do a lot of reading, and the words eventually sink in because you read enough of the same topic, you'll get a lot of the same words over and over again, especially if you read multiple books by the same author. But in Japanese, that's not enough because they use all these Chinese characters. So I do have to make paper flashcards just to cram the words temporarily, so that when I go back and reread the passage, I can recall at least the pronunciation and hopefully the meaning of the word. But then rereading the passage I actually retain the words, not the flashcards. So the flashcards are like something quick. Like I've tried with Anki and stuff, but that process is too slow. I need something that I can use right away when I'm reading.
Right.
So that's why I've gone back to paper flashcards. And then for speaking, like right now, I'm trying to learn to talk to myself in Korean. I want to learn conversation, but my workload is so heavy this year, I don't think I'll get much conversation practice on Skype. So I'm going to put that off till next year and just learn to talk to myself this year. And so I'm picking words of like objects in the world around me, words related to my excuse me, getting tired. Words related to my hobbies, and words related to like places I go, things I see. I do a lot of hiking and take a lot of walks, do a lot of driving in my car. And so I might learn words that you'll never find in the textbook, like the word lane for lanes of a road, road for a word for freeway or highway, as opposed to the word for road, a word for footbridge. The other day I was taking a walk and I saw a lot of rabbits. And so I looked up the word rabbit. It's because these are actually, when I talk to myself, when I think in the language, these are words I'll be using. And so for these, I also use paper flashcards, but I don't actually get rid of a card until I have actually used it without looking at the flashcard. When I'm talking to myself or making a practice sentence, because that's also how I learn grammar now, is I look up a grammar book for some constructions I think I want to use, write them into a notebook, little pocket notebook, take the pocket notebook with me when I'm hiking, and try to make my own sentences. And I try to combine the vocabulary I've been memorizing with the grammar in the notebook. And then once I know them well enough, I don't need these tools anymore. I can just talk to myself in the language. So this is the process I'm working on now. So by the end of summer, I should be able to talk to myself pretty well in Korean. And then I'll work on listening skills this next winter. So
nice. Well, let's I think we can wrap it up there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks for the interview.
Yeah, it was cool. It was really great. I feel honored to be your first the first channel that you've been on as an interview. I feel honored. So
thanks.
And it's always good. I guess we talked once before, didn't we? Yeah, we talked once before. We were talking about French stuff, but yeah, cool.
That's right. That was a private.
That was a good it was a good year ago, I think, but something like that. But anyway, yeah, so it's always good to chat with you, like voice to voice, and not 2D icon text to 2D icon text, aka comment replies and whatnot.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway,
all right.
Well, let's wrap it up there, and thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
You too. Bye.
All right, see ya.